Done. So I'm just going to start. Okay, so we're going. This is just a little bit in English. So and then. Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, this is chapter 1, the present. It was barely 8 a.m. and the phone was already ringing. Caroline could make out the distinctive 3-ring chime that signaled a long-distance call, even with the bathroom door closed and the shower running. She chose to ignore it, deciding it was probably a telemarketer or the press. Either alternative was odious, but given a choice between the two, Caroline would have opted for the telemarketer. Telemarketers were only after your money. The press wanted your blood, even after all this time. 15 years tomorrow. Well, that couldn't be right. How could 15 years of seemingly endless days and sleepless nights have passed by so quickly? At the very least, she would have thought public curiosity in her would have waned by now. But if anything, such interest had actually increased with each successive anniversary. Reporters had been calling for weeks, some from as far away as Australia and Japan. What was her life like now? Were there any new leads? Did she harbor any hopes? Did she still harbor hopes of seeing her daughter again? Did the police still consider her a suspect in the child's disappearance? Except Samantha would no longer be a child. Barely 2 when she vanished without a trace from her crib at an upscale Mexican resort. Her daughter would be 17 now, assuming she was still alive. So in answer to their questions, there were no new leads. She'd never give up hope. She no longer gave a hoot what the police thought about her, and her life would be a lot better if the vultures of the press would leave her the hell alone. Stepping onto the heated white and gray marble floor of her bathroom, she wrapped herself in her large white terry cloth bathrobe and swiped at the layer of steam that coated the large mirror above the double sink with the palm of her right hand. A 46-year-old woman with wet brown hair and tired green eyes stared back at her, a far cry from the beautiful and reserved young woman with haunted eyes the newspapers had described at the time of Samantha's disappearance, somehow managing to make the words beautiful and reserved ugly and accusatory. Around the 10-year mark, beautiful became striking and reserved morphed into remote. And last year, a reporter had demoted her further, referring to her as, quote, a still attractive middle-aged woman, end quote, damning her with faint praise, but damning her nonetheless. Whatever, she was used to it. Caroline took a deep breath, deciding tomorrow's press clippings would probably describe her as the, quote, once attractive mother of missing child Samantha Shipley. Did it even matter what she looked like? Would she be any less guilty of neglect, of bad parenting, of murder in the court of public opinion because she was less attractive than she'd been at the time of her daughter's disappearance? Then she'd been excoriated in the press from everything from the cut of her cheekbones to the shortness of her skirts, from the shine of her then shoulder-length hair to the sheen of her lipstick. Even the sincerity of her tears had been called into question, one tabloid commenting that at one press conference her mascara had made, quote, curiously undisturbed. Her husband had received only a tiny fraction of the vitriol that had come Caroline's way. As handsome as he was, there was a blandness about Hunter's good looks that made him less of a target, while Caroline's natural shyness had the unfortunate tendency to come across as aloof. Hunter's more outgoing personality had made him seem both accessible and open. He was portrayed as a father, quote, barely holding himself together while clinging tight to his older daughter, Michelle, a cherub-cheeked child of 5. His wife standing, quote, ramrod straight beside them, separate and apart. No mention of the fact that it had been at Hunter's insistence that they went out that night, even after the babysitter they'd hired failed to show. No mention of the fact he left Mexico to return to his law practice in San Diego barely a week after Samantha's disappearance. No mention of the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, the final betrayal that had doomed their marriage once and for all. Except that had been her fault too. Everything my fault.
Alles meine Schuld, sagte Caroline zu ihrem Stiefel.